Picture a stoplight on an ordinary Tuesday. In the left lane sits a brand new blacked-out luxury SUV, freshly washed with the dealer plate still on. Right next to it idles a 10-year-old Honda, a small dent in the bumper and a coffee cup on the dash. If I asked which driver was wealthy, you already have an answer. Almost everyone does. Here is the strange part. In 2026, the safer bet is the dented Honda. The driver in the luxury SUV is far more likely to be drowning. So how did we reach a place where the people who look richest are often the most broke, while the ones quietly building wealth go out of their way to look like they have nothing? That question is the whole video. Looking poor on purpose turns out to be one of the smartest financial moves a person can make, and the wealthy have known it for a long time. Let me show you who is actually sitting in that SUV. A decade ago the loud spenders were a smaller crowd, today they are everywhere, and a startling share are running on fumes. Heading into 2026, roughly 60% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck. That number alone is sobering. The detail underneath should stop you cold. Around 40% of people earning six figures finish the month with nothing left over. It helps to see where the money goes. The average household now spends around $6,500 a month just to live, nearly $78,000 a year before a single luxury. Meanwhile, the savings rate sat near 4.5% in early 2026, against a historical average closer to 8.5%. We keep about half of what previous generations did while spending more to look the part. More than half of adults said they could not cover a surprise $1,000 expense, and one survey put the typical emergency balance at around $600, not $6,600. And the makeup of that struggle has shifted. The share stretched out of pure necessity has grown and overtaken the people who once spent freely because they felt comfortable. So when you glance at that shiny SUV and feel a flicker of envy, hold on to this. A large share of those payments are made by people one missed paycheck from a real crisis. Here's what almost everyone misses. The loud version of wealth and the real version are rarely the same people, we have simply been trained to confuse them. Humans are wired to read status. For most of history, those signals carried survival information about who had food and who was worth aligning with. That instinct never disappeared, it just got hijacked. Now the signals are a watch, a logo, a car, a vacation framed at exactly the right angle. We are not really buying the thing. We are buying a sentence we hope other people will say about us. There is even a name in economics for goods that get more desirable precisely because they cost more. The price tag is the whole point. But the people we perform for are performing right back. Everyone is dressing up for an audience too busy with its own costume to notice yours. Economists call the cycle this creates the treadmill. The new car feels great for a few weeks, then becomes your normal, so you reach for the next upgrade just to feel the spark again. And the treadmill speeds up as your income climbs. That is lifestyle inflation, the silent killer behind those paycheck-to-paycheck six-figure earners. Their income went up, their spending crept up to match and then past it. A raise that should have bought freedom bought a heavier stack of monthly bills instead. A single nice purchase quietly demands a dozen more. Buy one beautiful chair, and suddenly the couch looks shabby, then the rug, then the curtains have to go too. One upgrade sets a new baseline, and everything around it has to rise to meet it. The same thing happens with the people we let in. Move into the nicer neighborhood and the pressure arrives uninvited, about the car that belongs in that driveway and the vacations the other families take. The wealthy who stay wealthy notice this cascade early and refuse to start it. They understand the most expensive part of a purchase is often not the purchase. It is everything that purchase quietly obligates you to buy next. Now let me put a hard number on the cost of looking rich. Start with the most visible status symbol in American life, the car. In December of 2025, the average price paid for a new vehicle hit a record, just over $50,000. The average monthly payment climbed to nearly $770, an all-time high, on an average loan of around $44,000. To make the payments survivable, buyers stretch loans to absurd lengths. More than a third of new car loans now run past 6 years, and 85-month terms are climbing fast. Nearly 1 in 5 new car loans now carries a payment north of $1,000 a month, and most are not supercars. They are ordinary trucks and family SUVs. A new car typically sheds a fifth or more of its value in the first year. So on a long loan there is a stretch where you owe more than the car is even worth. If the car gets totaled or you need to sell, the loan does not politely shrink to match. You are left on the hook for the gap. Multiply that across the country and Americans now owe more than $1.67 trillion in auto loans. The badge of having made it has quietly become an anchor. Here is the calculation almost nobody runs before they sign. A car payment is never just a car payment, it is a decision about your future self. Imagine driving a paid-off used car and funneling that same $750 into a low-cost index fund every month instead. At a long-run average of around 7% after inflation, that habit grows to well over $100,000 in 10 years. Keep it running for 30 years and you are staring at a figure north of $900,000. So the real choice was never nice car or boring car. It was a nicer car now, or close to $1 million later. And the younger you are, the more violent the difference. For a 25-year-old, the luxury car quietly purchases a decade of extra working years, billed to a future self who never got a vote. The same logic runs through the biggest purchase most people make, the house. A bigger home is more tax, more insurance, more maintenance, and the quiet pressure to fill every new room with furniture. And the bill for the image often arrives monthly with interest. Americans carried about $1.25 trillion in credit card debt, with balance carriers averaging near $6,700 at a brutal 21%. Zoom out and total household debt has crossed $18.8 trillion. A meaningful slice of that is not survival, it is the running cost of a costume. Now here is the number that reframes everything, and almost nobody sees it because it is invisible by design. Income announces itself loudly, while net worth stays completely silent. The median household net worth, the true middle, sits at around $192,000. The average gets reported as roughly $1,060,000, but only because a few enormously wealthy households drag it upward. The median is the honest picture. It gets sharper by age. Households under 35 have a median net worth near $39,000, far less than the cars and houses around them suggest. And the line researchers keep returning to is this: your savings rate predicts your future wealth better than your income does. A high earner who saves almost nothing ends up poorer than a modest earner who quietly invested a fifth of everything. The faucet does not decide who is wealthy, what you do with the water does. Once you absorb that, your whole street looks different. The house with the boat and 2 new trucks might be the most leveraged on the block, and the plain neighbor might be sitting on a portfolio that would surprise you. So what do the genuinely wealthy do instead? The answer is almost boring, and that is exactly why it works. Go back to the dented Honda, because the data has been pointing at it the whole time. Researchers found that 61% of households earning more than $250,000 a year do not drive luxury brands at all. They drive the same Hondas, Toyotas, and Fords as your neighbors. Someone pulling in $250,000 a year could clearly afford the badge. The majority simply choose not to. A landmark study of millionaires found most people tie up nearly a third of their net worth in vehicles. Actual millionaires spend around 1%. They buy used, they buy quality, they drive it into the ground, and they rarely finance it. The richest people in the research were consistently the least interested in looking the part. Around 69% of millionaires never averaged 6 figures in a single year, and roughly 80% built it themselves rather than inheriting it. So the picture is not giant salaries and glittering lives. It is ordinary incomes meeting unusual discipline. One author compressed the whole secret into a sentence worth memorizing. When people stop wasting money trying to look wealthy, they finally have the money to actually become wealthy. By 2026, this is no longer a quirk of a few frugal millionaires. Stealth wealth has grown into a full cultural shift. Among the genuinely wealthy, visible logos have started to read as insecurity rather than success. The new signal is the absence of a signal, a beautifully made coat with no branding at all. Beneath them, the middle class copied the strategy out of pure practicality. The whole point is to use what you already own until it genuinely wears out, and to repair instead of replace. Some even went back to physical cash for slippery categories like dining out, not because they are broke, but because handing over real bills keeps the spending in check. The quiet result is families redirecting thousands a year away from the costume and into their investments. The look went out of style the moment people realized it was making them poor. This brings us to the most important distinction in personal finance. Income is the water coming through the faucet. Wealth is the water you actually keep in the tank. A person can have a huge salary and a tank with a crack in the bottom, spending every dollar as fast as it pours in. They look rich and own almost nothing. And the truest measure is not even the tank, it is what the tank lets you do. Can you walk away from a grinding job, take 6 months off for a family emergency, or say no to money that compromises you? Picture 2 coworkers hired the same week on the same salary. One leases the car that matches the title, the other quietly invests a fifth of every paycheck, and when layoffs hit, the flashy one grabs the first job that calls while the plain one has a cushion deep enough to wait and choose. Once that clicks, the strategy stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like a cheat code. So here is the actual playbook, the way the quietly wealthy operate, in moves you can start this week. Move 1, decouple your income from your identity. When your income rises, hold your lifestyle steady and let the difference flow into investments, because the gap is what turns into freedom, not the salary. Move 2, make saving automatic and spending difficult. Automate transfers on payday before the money feels spendable, delete the shopping apps, and put a waiting day between wanting something and buying it. The mechanic underneath it is pay yourself first. The investment comes out the instant the paycheck lands, and you build your life around what remains, so you keep investing through the scary months too. Move 3, drive it till it dies, and use everything else until it genuinely fails. Before a purchase, divide the price by how many times you will really use it, and most impulse buys collapse on the spot. Move 4, test before you commit. Most new hobbies fade after the first burst, so rent or borrow the gear first, and only buy the full kit once the interest proves real. Move 5, define what enough looks like before the money arrives. Decide in advance what a sufficient home, car, and life are, then let every dollar beyond that build the tank instead of moving the goalpost. Move 6, mute the comparison feed. You are not keeping up with the wealthy, you are keeping up with other stretched people who are simply very good at lighting and angles. But I have to be honest about the most important part. All of this sits on a foundation, and if it is missing, none of it holds. Looking poor on purpose is a strategy, but financial literacy is the operating system that strategy runs on. So go back one last time to that stoplight. The goal was never to look rich, it was to be free, and freedom is quiet. The next time you feel the pull to spend proving something to people who are not watching, remember the Honda.